Welcome back, everybody, to the Derby City Fandom podcast. Now, today, we are going to talk about one of the newer entries to the science fiction, outer space genre, if we want to call it that. Man, these movies got some problems, but we'll go into it. It does have some good
Space opera?
Space opera, yes. So if you're wondering which movie we're talking about, unfortunately, we're not talking about Dune. We're talking about Rebel Moon.
Rebel Moon.
Rebel
Good old
Moon.
Zack Schneider.
It's Snyder. Close enough, though.
Schneider, whatever. He sucks.
Well, we can go into that, I suppose. Colin, the last time we ended up doing your segment at the end of the last episode we did. Well, let's start off with you. How did this show, movie, whatever we want to call this?
Oh, we're going into
ratings.
Okay, so for the first one, it on Rotten Tomatoes got a whopping 57%.
Seems low to me.
And IMDb a 5.6 out of 10. Now keep in mind that's the first one.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Part 2, 50% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. And IMDb a 5.2 out of 10.
Yeah. Oh boy. Things were attempted in this film with varying success.
That's a nice way to put it. Things were attempted.
Yes. As Colin and I were kind of discussing it earlier before you arrived, this film has a very clear case of copy my homework, but make it legally distinct.
Yeah, I can see it.
And then I followed up with, it had a lot of inspiration, for sure.
They had a lot of inspiration.
Yes. Some interesting design choices as well.
Yeah, visually it was kind of cool. I liked some of the worlds when they showed the moon. I don't know.
Yeah, sure. The
reaching.
Little doc,
I'm
like
reaching
the half
for
hour,
positive comments.
Right? The little like half hour like documentary thing they made about the creation of the two movies, to me was more interesting, and it made me kind of appreciate them a tiny bit more. But the stories are just so off-putting a little bit. Like there are story beats that are just not there that you need to have.
I wouldn't go as, off-putting is a little harsh. I wouldn't go as far as that, but I would say more like convoluted. You know, there's so much going on in one film, and you're trying to follow up because every particular character that is introduced has a backstory, and then the one-on-one interaction between that character that was just introduced and the one chick, like, well, what's your story? Well, here's my story. Now, what's your story? It's just like,
I'm not going to tell you my story because I don't have a story. Just, we're trying to hire you to, fight the evil empire.
It's a lot. It's a lot in the first one. It's entertaining, but there's a lot to take in, and then they try to exploit that in the second one, but we'll get that in later on.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot. It definitely goes pretty quick. They throw a lot at you within a short period of time.
Yeah.
If it was like, if there's some random person giving the backstory, I probably would have just not paid attention at all. But since it was Sir Anthony Hopkins, is he a sir?
He is a sir.
Okay, Sir Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, he has a pleasant voice, and I like the dude. He and I go way back.
Great job voicing Jimmy.
Hey, that was one of my favorite characters, Jimmy.
Well, he has like next to no interactions in the first film.
The first film, he literally has like 3 or 4 interactions that he's on screen, and then the second one, he just shows up randomly.
Yeah, I was gonna say the second one's not much better.
Yeah.
He plays a vital role kind of later on, but then when I was watching the part 2, the entire time I'm like, where the heck is the Jimmy?
He's just
like,
out in the wheat field somewhere.
And
He's
top of
out in
that-
the wheat field, or he's on top of a freaking mountain looking down onto the little
Just
small
onto the
village.
Yeah.
That and maybe I missed it, but they never really explained like why is he wearing antlers?
He's no,
Like,
because
what
remember
is
he
going
was
on
wearing
with
the
The daisy
little
flower
the flower crown, yeah.
right. And then the next time we see him, he's wearing freaking antlers. Like, okay, is he now the leader of the village? Did he become friends with a reindeer or something? I don't know.
Gosh. Okay, well, I suppose we'll just talk about the first film and we'll work our way down.
Up.
Whatever. But okay, we're introduced to our main characters, I guess. Cora,
A peaceful moon.
a peaceful moon, a farming village.
Yeah, Cora, and then there's a farmer named Gunnar,
Gunnar,
Gunner.
and he obviously has the hots for Cora.
Don't we all?
But a peaceful little village, and then the mother world has some battleship that just randomly shows up.
Oh yeah, the King's Gaze. Because they decide to try to explain why there's an evil empire thing without like a Star Wars-esque like story credit roll at the beginning to like explain everything and set it up like quick and concise. They're just like, oh, there's an empire. They're kind of trying to like fight off the rebels. But at that point, you don't know if the rebels are the evil ones or if the empire is the evil one. And then you quickly learn that, oh, like, you know, the moment that they step off the ship, the guy is in like a World War One Russian trench coat.
Which may
I actually didn't mind like them jumping headfirst into this broader galaxy. Like you got to start somewhere, right?
Sure.
So I mean, obviously they stole it from Star Wars, but to have that, it's like, all right, it made sense. It probably made sense because of Star Wars. Like everyone's kind of has the background of like, all right, we know how this works. You have some alleged mother world that's
Yeah.
evil, and you have these peaceful villagers living on some outer moon, and there's probably rebellions and people that hate it. But so that part, I didn't mind that. It's just when they were recruiting all the armies, which we'll get to in a second.
Yeah.
When I was like,
They needed to spend more time explaining, like, why, like, the assassination of, like, the king, queen, and princess were, like, important. But they, instead of, like, doing, like, a lore dump at the beginning, they spread it out over, like, 10 minutes at random parts in the film.
yeah, it's pretty sporadic. Did they explain it? When did they actually show the assassination?
I think
and the
that's
second
mostly in
one,
the
part two.
Part two,
Part two.
right? Yeah.
Part two.
Because we figure out what Cora's involvement truly was,
Yeah.
like, how in-depth
She
it
was-
actually was.
Yeah, she ends
But in
up
the
being
first one, in the first film, we just find out that she was like the bodyguard, right?
the bodyguard to
Princess.
the princess who doesn't die or whatever the fuck they say.
Has like special like life magic.
Yeah,
magic exists
she's
in this
able to bring
universe.
a bird back to life.
Hey,
And that's the only time that's ever brought up in that first film, and it's just entirely random.
yeah, it's pretty random too.
But oh boy. But yeah, so naturally, Atticus Noble, basically evil empire lackey, comes down and asks the little farming village for food, and it goes about as well as you think it does. Yes, I like to point out that the head farmer guy took 2 beats of the club, while everybody else in the film took only 1 to die.
Well, yeah. Sindri.
Yep.
Old man Sindri.
But then they give in and say, yeah, we can have the crops to you in what, like
10 weeks.
10 weeks? Yeah,
Yeah.
that was like
9
eight-
weeks to
eight-
grow, and then an extra week, I guess, for space travel or something.
Yeah. So that entire time, that's when they end up, they show that in the second film. They're getting all their shit together and doing all the...
Yeah, it's
Growing
interesting
and-
because they set up like a timetable for the film, and then it's never brought up again. because of how that first film like actually plays out. Like the 9 weeks ends up being like a moot point.
Yeah, no, they don't at all establish how much time has gone by when they're going from, planet to planet recruiting characters.
Yeah,
2 weeks later
To build the rebels.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is where the movie loses me. So I thought it actually started off pretty strong. Like I like the initial plot. I like this concept of like an outer moon. I thought it looked kind of cool.
Yeah.
You had this peaceful farming village, and you had this kind of like rogue, former assassin, personal bodyguard to the prior queen or princess, just kind of hiding out there. So I was fine with all that. So, like, once the plot started rolling, when they go to that port town of, I think it's called Providence, and they're trying to recruit an army.
The bar scene.
And that's when they start losing me from the whole plot of this. Like, okay. So you have this giant battleship, and this one woman's just going to go out and recruit an army of these peasant farmers to defend it. It's like, come on, man.
So part of this is jumping ahead a little bit, but it also loses me by the end of the first film that what is effectively an army of maybe 12 people is able to stage like a rebellion against like a warship.
It's like,
After like hyping up like this spaceship, the King's Gaze.
Yeah, like it makes no sense. It's such a huge hole in the plot that's not even entertaining to watch. Like it was fun to watch them try to recruit, but even that seemed rushed to me, and you never really got to. I guess they tried their best in part 2 to kind of show the backstories of them all, but you don't get that at all in part 1. You're like, who the hell are these people?
Hold on.
Like, why should we care about them? And
you get more backstory on General Titus than you do on
any
other
other
people.
characters. Any other characters? Yes, I agree.
Because Titus is the only one that actually has like a distant affiliation with Korra. Because in theory, they knew each other back when Korra was a part of the army for the Imperials.
Mm-hmm. But once again, the plot for me, she's going out recruiting for these people, and after a while, you start connecting the dots. Like, oh, she's literally just recruiting like a dozen individuals. Like it's not like Star Wars where there's I think there's an already existing rebellion out there, but it becomes blatantly obvious like that's not who she's like going for this General Titus person. It's like, I guess this general's gonna whoop these peasant farmers into shape so they can take on this giant
there is a fun little
otherworld battleship.
It's entirely accidental. I have to think it's accidental, but the actor that is Titus is outside a Coliseum when some of his better roles are from Gladiator. So it's just like, that's a fun nod, entirely unintentional.
Yeah, I enjoy that actor, Jimon Hanzu. If I'm probably butchering his name,
We apologize in advance.
But him in Gladiator for sure. That's the first movie I ever saw with him, and I very much enjoyed that actor. And then I think the next role that I saw him portray was Blood Diamond.
Yes, Blood Diamond was his other big one.
Yeah, with Leonardo DiCaprio. So I enjoyed that actor very much. And, he's in other movies like Guardians of the Galaxy and whatever ones we had mentioned before the episode, Kenny. But, yeah, I enjoy him. But like you said, I thought it was funny, too, when he's sitting outside a Coliseum. He's portraying this, old drunk when essentially he's not really a drunk, or he's faking it, or I didn't really understand that part.
He's trying to drink away the memories is basically
but later
what his
on in part 2, like he has the little canteen or a little whatever, but it's filled with water at one point. So like, is he faking, like playing off like the beat down retired general, or was he in fact a drunk, but then he came to the Rebel Moon, whatever the fuck that place is called, and then while he was doing farm work, he basically, sobered up. I don't know. Yeah. But he was drinking water at some point.
Yeah. To your point, Colin, it's like one of those things like, I just did not care. It did not interest me.
And he's the one that had the most backstory, because you find out.
And the first one.
The first one. At least.
But the way they go about it in the second one to give everybody their whole background for each individual character was like they sit down at a fucking table and they have like a, you know, Knights of the Round Table kind of vibe, like, well, I came into this because blah blah blah, I actually used to be a prince and then my family got killed. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. Well, this is the way I came about my life, blah blah blah. And they literally did that for each individual character. And I was like,
yeah,
except who cares?
The only difference is that they have Nemesis try to like emotionally bond with the weird alien spider that kidnaps the little girl in the mine planet.
Yeah. I was just getting like, I don't know, like the shit, like the, what do they call it? It's on Coruscant in Star Wars, but it's the factory like where Sidious was hanging out, like when they're flying over, and it's just like factories and smokestacks and all that. That's the kind of vibe that
district.
Yes, thank you.
There's another word for it in other medias. Like for example, in Warhammer, that's a hive world.
Sure.
Where it's all they do is they just do production. Life is miserable there. Everything is soot and factory. Like, you know, you work like 20 hours a day.
Yeah. I definitely got a Star Wars vibe there, and then she freaking brings out her swords that just happen to freaking light up, and I mean, like, are those swords made of like Beskar or something? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, there's, you know, that whole bit of, you know, copy my homework.
Yeah.
But make it distinct.
Yeah.
Legally.
Yep. Yeah. It was fun. It's
Oh gosh, but
did you guys care about the other characters at all? I know you're talking about. I think her name's Nemesis, right?
Nemesis.
I just called her
like
Sword Lady, but
yeah, she's like supposed to be a cyborg, but you don't really get like that impression in the first movie.
In the first film, no, they explain it, air quotes, better in the second one. Yeah, because she was human, but then, you know, all of her family and pretty much her whole world was destroyed. But they have a samurai sword essentially, and she literally does cut off her own arm so she can feel the pain, and there's a whole little story there. And so she has this robotic arms attached to her, and she has the legs cut off too. She does it all herself apparently. So
yeah,
I don't know how you cut off your other arm when you have no arm, but I guess
the first film kind of ends up coming off kind of campy, almost for the reasons that we were describing, that as these like individual like named rebels like start joining the crew, like it's just kind of campy. It's like we see like Tarek's like taming of the beast thing, and then like the moment he leaves, the beast turns on the original.
Oh, the hippogriff. So you saw you saw him bow to the hippogriff, so that was a nod to Harry Potter for sure. But then he ends up getting off, and then he goes and joins them, and then the hippogriff ends up hurting some other dude, aka Malfoy, and yeah. But Malfoy doesn't die. He goes and cries to his father because he has a scratch on his arm.
Sure is.
Yeah, that was a stupid scene too.
The slave owner, or whatever his position was, is a moron. Because he just blatantly assumes that these 4 other people that are clearly armed talking to me are just going to willingly become my slaves if this doesn't work out.
Yeah, no,
in their
that's
favor.
not going to happen. Yes, dude, this was like an old fat dude.
Like some random hillbilly on a backwater.
Gray beard kind of guy. There's no way he has any combat experience whatsoever. And he doesn't even have
guards.
like a militia, if you will.
He had like 2 bodyguards.
Yeah. Against how many? 4 or 5? Yeah. And this dude, by the way, is freaking ripped. What's the prince dude's name?
Tarek.
Yeah.
He's
He's freaking ripped. I'm just like, Good
Oh
God.
yeah, no, that's definitely just there for eye candy.
Yeah, 100%.
Because,
The
like, the
entire
farmers-
film, his shirt is off. So, like, if any females watch the movie, they're like, "Oh my God, I just want to watch him."
Yeah, it ends up just being like it's an interesting just handful of scenes where it's just like, okay, we're going to tame this beast by like riding on it. After like you establish this like emotional connection to it, then you hop onto it, and then the animal's just like, wait, what the fuck? I didn't agree to this shit, and just flies off.
It's so stupid, man. Like I said, once they, I like the movie through that port town on the moon.
Yeah.
So once they like kind of meet Kai and they leave the ship, the rest of it's like this is ridiculous. Like Colin, you summed it up perfectly. But they go to Tarek, pick up Pelham, and now we get just thrown into Harry Potter. I'm like, this is getting dumb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it goes like full like spaghetti westerns. You go to like the little bar, you see like a handful of different aliens. This is clearly just supposed to be a Star Wars cantina. You don't have like any fun music going on in the background.
I thought that was kind of cool though. So I like the little port town. I did have a question for you all.
Sure,
did you
go for it.
expect, or did you guys have a vibe that Kai was going to end up being or betraying them?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I didn't see that
the
coming.
roguish character was already established with the farmer guy. So this guy is clearly just, Mr. Curse you and your inevitable betrayal.
Yeah, and if you've ever seen Sons of Anarchy, like he
Plays the same character.
he basically plays his same character in whatever role he's in, kind of like
really?
He got typecasted super hard in that.
the 120%. So, like, don't get me wrong, Chris Heenan, I can't remember his last name. Heenan,
There.
what is it?
About, Charlie Hunnam.
Oh, Charlie. I thought it was Chris. Charlie.
Wrong guy.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, he's a cool dude. I like him. Sons of Anarchy, definitely give that a watch for sure.
I'll be candid. I didn't see that coming. So that was a nice little twist at the end.
Yeah. There's. Okay. That goes into like some more like details of just things that I guess us as viewers know that are going to happen because of how the plotting of the movie has gone by so far. It's like, okay, clearly Gunnar is not going to actually betray Korra, but they still hand him the gun thing that instantly kills people when you shoot it into their spinal cord.
Mm-hmm. Did you guys like the ending of the first one? Like the final battle scene and.
I mean, it was entertaining. It was visually entertaining.
I don't like that Darian Bloodaxe managed to miss the guy sitting down in a cockpit.
Yeah, like you're
The fact that
literally
took
taking
2
a
stabs
running
is
start
absurd.
and you're going up like this, and you literally just
Miss.
by an inch. I'm like, no, man. Like you're aiming, you're going straight for that freaking center.
Well,
Like
you
that's the
don't
biggest
aim
part
for
of your
the-
body. You're not aiming for the freaking head
Don't
or
aim
like
for the head, aim for the part that's strapped into the chair.
Yeah, you're not gonna miss that. But because they wanted to give it more action or whatever, give him a proper send off. I don't even know.
I didn't care for Atticus Noble surviving.
Oh, he reminds me of that
It's like, why?
little prick that is like the new Empire in the newer Star Wars films. The one that's like
the redhead.
yeah, the one that's Kylo's like
Yeah.
Imperial buddy.
I forget what his name is.
Yeah.
He has that vibes, but he doesn't come off as inherently threatening. And then they throw in like this weird scene where he's getting like leeched or something
Yeah, it's just
in like
I
a
don't
tub
know.
after taking like some space drugs. And it just comes off as weird.
Yeah, I just didn't care for it. Like they would have been better off just killing him off, and then part 2 just
Yeah.
maybe like picking up his brother or someone else from this mother world empire, evil empire, just like, you know what? There's this group of rebels on this moon that just killed I don't know, but
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
boy.
that little part that you're talking about, Kenny, where he's got all the tubes hooked up to him and whatnot. I feel like that was like a little bit of a nod to Dune, where what's his face is just sitting in like the mud bath or whatever.
Yeah. Oh.
and then they rub it into my face because the one character I wanted to see more of was Jimmy. Then at the very end, they kind of return back to the moon, and then like Jimmy's
Just
overlooking from
watching
the
all
cliff
from
or
a
what the
distance,
mountain or whatever. I'm like,
No,
what
he's
the
he's
hell?
in the wheat field and he has antlers.
Yeah.
It's
he's
this is
he's
so
upgraded
stupid.
from the flower crown to like some like tribal antler stuff.
The entire time, like he's the one character that I wanted to see, and I'm
Yeah.
glad I got to see him at the end. So like we knew that he was up to something, but I'm like, what
His
the fuck?
his particular character is confusing to me for a couple of reasons. So they established that these robots are like properly like AI. They have some capacity to think for themselves and act for themselves on their own. Yet they still follow orders from the Empire.
See, I liked how they portrayed him because I think they did a pretty good job at the beginning, kind of doing the backstory. And I missed the whole AI thing because they did portray him at the very beginning, like, oh, he has to follow orders. But then he's kind of talking to the girl by the creek bed. And he's kind of giving the backstory, like, about the princess and this and that.
Like
and
that was good.
They do good
development,
visualization. Like you can see, like when she touches his, face, like it all lights up. So you're like, oh, maybe there's a little bit more to this story. But
Yeah.
he did. I thought they did a pretty good job, like telling his backstory. So he was the one character that I truly connected with from part one. I was like, they needed more of him. Like I don't know how they would write him in, but and then they filled on that in part two because they brought him in way too late.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where they establish like who he is, like what the robots were created to be. I think the Mechanicus army. That's a different can of worms, but the Mechanicus army was like what their designation were. So they were like supposed to protect the royalty. So once the royalty dies off, then they lose their purpose, right?
Yeah.
But they then tried to establish that like he's like the only one left without actually describing why he's the only one left.
I don't know.
Right. I'm even more of a reason to
know.
just be so confused about what the hell is going on in these films. No idea.
Yeah, so going back to like your ranking call, the part one, I thought it was entertaining. There was definitely confusing parts behind it. I don't think it. What'd you say it was like 55? Is what people were running at.
No,
57,
It
50s.
seems a little harsh. Like it's definitely not 80 or 90 worthy, but I'm like, I don't know. It was worth a good Netflix watch.
A lazy Sunday.
Lazy
It's
Sunday.
a lazy Sunday film.
Now I hate part
But
two. I
the-
struggle to get through part two.
Yeah. I think everybody's main criticism of it is that Zack Snyder tried to create like a new universe without actually giving it any like weight. Now that might just be because there's only like 2 films. That might be like a Netflix issue because I feel like this series of movies, I think we're going to end up getting 6 by the end of it, 6 different films.
Oh god, I'm very.
But
I'm very doubtful of
originally
that.
this film was split into 2 because of Netflix. Like it was going to be like spread out, but this first film, so to speak, was split into 2 parts, which is what we get. We get like Child of Fire and like Scar Giver.
Yeah.
So all of those stories are technically supposed to be like one like book, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But this show needs more backstory. You need to give these people more gravitas. You need to give like more gravitas to the royal family. You need to properly establish why Belisarius is evil instead of like all of his lackeys establishing why they're evil.
Yeah, it just never landed for me. They wanted it to be Star Wars
Yeah.
with some Harry Potter and Dune thrown in, probably some additional stuff. It just never landed.
Yeah. I believe I remember reading that he had originally pitched this to LucasArts and Disney.
They denied it.
They just laughed out loud. Like,
right, but they wanted basically a grittier Star Wars, like grim dark, going back to I guess Warhammer, like in the grim dark future of the Milky Way galaxy, there is only war. Like that is like the tagline for Warhammer 40K. Yeah. Is that everything sucks. Now, as we can probably tell, Disney denied it and told Zack Snyder, it's like, we don't want this in our Star Wars universe. Piss off.
Good call.
Good call. Yeah, really good call.
I can't imagine watching that on Disney. I can't.
You guys want to talk part 2?
Go for it.
You're
going to be a bit more familiar with part 2.
It gets worse. Did you
30 minutes in, and
did you watch it, Cole?
Yeah, let me just say this before we get into any more detail. But the movie would have been probably 30 to 40 minutes shorter if it wasn't for the slow motion.
Yes. So editor Kenny might hate me for this, but there is like a solid 3 to 4 minutes in the first film that are dedicated just to random, I'm going to call it the Snyder slow-mo. But just him going into slow-mo, just in parts that don't need to be. Like, I get that you're trying to emphasize this, but one of the bits that Colin and I were talking about earlier prior to the podcast is that emotions are better conveyed in music and in lines and in character action instead of just hearing everything go into slow-mo and you hear the sound go out.
Yeah.
That's not how you, it is how you add emphasis on stuff, but it's not.
It doesn't need to be done every other scene. It doesn't need to be done in the Matrix where he's freaking dodging the bullets. That's kind of cool. They do that on occasion in that movie. In this movie, they freaking do it every other, if not every other scene. And it's just my God.
Now, for the record, I think that 300 did do it well, but that's because it was a different movie than what we're presented with here.
Right.
It was also the first one to really go that excessive with it, so it gets a pass.
Yeah, those are like bullets and shit. Where in 300 they were bows and arrows or spears or jabs or kicking some dude. Right, 100% exactly. But we're talking about freaking a cannon or a tank shooting a building. You just see the building go. And that is literally happening for 3 to 4 minutes. Okay, I get it. The building is blowing up. And the fact that they have an entire city blown up and the freaking people are just standing there just gallivanting and slowly getting on a ship while basically getting Rogue One vibes of an entire planet might as well be blowing up and they're just taking their time. Meanwhile, Rogue One, they're freaking jettisoning out of the freaking planet. They're rushing to get off that freaking planet because it's blowing up. Meanwhile, these dudes are just taking their time getting on the ship.
I also want to complain that for an evil empire that is rather convinced that nobody's actually going to try to fight back against them, they do a lot of their stuff from low orbit where most planetary defenses, if they exist, would be able to retaliate. You got to do that stuff from outer space, man. You don't give them an opportunity to hit you back.
Yeah.
And the fact they're using a freaking scope and they're using the wheel to freaking lower down the cannon and shoot it, and that literally takes half the freaking movie. That one particular scene, if you know what I'm talking about, Jake, when they're blowing it onto the city, that's a quarter, if not half of the film, and
half the scene at least for sure.
God, it's just my God, for advanced civilization that has all these ships and all this shit. They're freaking using shit from the 1960s. A, B, they're using tanks that are giving off mass black exhaust. You think during a advanced civilization,
everything runs on diesel.
Yeah, that tank right there is running on diesel, and you're telling me you're an advanced civilization? Bullshit.
Yeah, part 2 had some serious problems with it.
Okay, so if we're going into the other details, I hate the fact that these like Imperial ships are all like weird, like rounded water bottle things. Like spaceships don't need to be aerodynamic. There's no air in space.
But, ships are able to explode and there be fire. So clearly there's oxygen in space.
What drove me nuts is, so in part 2, their big emphasis was on how badass this General Titus guy was, right?
Sure.
So they wanted to like emphasize that his ability to like make defensive positions and try to make these
genius.
traps and the genius and all this. So I went into it thinking, Colin knows this, but one of my favorite movies is Kingdom of Heaven. So in Kingdom of Heaven, they do something similar where they like emphasize like, hey, we're gonna paint these rocks and do these little traps. But like, it makes sense if your opponent is some like medieval army. But if your opponent, your whole point is like this technologically advanced space traveling military, like what are we even doing? And then their plot armor is, well, we'll surround all the buildings and the women and children or whatever with the grain, since they won't like blow the grain up. I'm like, come on, like, are they really that strapped for food? Like, is that what's going on here? Like, why don't they just blow the whole village to smithereens? Like, what are we doing?
That's
whole
like the
thing just
weird like
drove me
starting
nuts.
like plot point of that first film. It's like, okay, or like how do you not plan for like an extended like space excursion to run out of food?
Like, it's just so stupid. Like, the whole fight scene was such a big disappointment. I'm like, this is ridiculously dumb.
Again, just bomb them from outer space.
Yeah.
Don't worry about this low orbit shit. It makes for like a fun effect. Like we see that in that first film where, the charity city is like, being nuked, like mushroom clouds and all from low orbit.
And here they are just walking along, and then they slowly get on their ship. Meanwhile, a freaking shockwave is coming at.
It catches up with them. It does. You can see it.
Yeah.
In the effects. And
it makes zero sense.
I mean, it doesn't come off as a, like, cool guys don't look at explosions kind of thing. It just comes off as lazy. Like, there is no, it's like a lazy confidence, I guess, maybe. I'll give Noble a little credit. He's just like, okay, screw you guys. You helped our enemies out, so die. Hit the big red button.
It drove me nuts. Like, I had to pause part 2 multiple times. Like, it took me forever to get through that film because even the fight scene, to Colin's point, like, it just dragged on. I'm like, you guys shouldn't even have a fighting chance.
The fact that on several occasions they don't just immediately, I mean, I know why they don't do this, because of the movie has to be a movie, right? The story has to go somewhere. You can't just like, you've established that these people are like the only things like, fighting against your empire. Why not just shoot them on sight?
Yeah, it's so stupid. I mean, like, I understand, like, well, we need to make a movie. I was like, well, if there's this giant hole in the plot, like, maybe this movie should not be made. That should tell you right there.
There's at least going to be 2 more, possibly 4.
There's no way.
Go
ahead.
There's no way.
I can't help but laugh, but I was definitely laughing during this scene. Like, they had this whole plan of like this Trojan horse kind of thing where they're in a ship and they use a flare or smoke or some kind of a flare basically to imply that their ship is damaged, and they get onto the King's gaze, and that the pilot, co-pilot, or whoever's on the ship are injured, and they the medical people, they take them and they don't see any blood or any cuts, nothing. They don't find that suspicious, but they're still looking, and they just happen to be on the elevator. And then like when that scene happened, I couldn't help but think of Captain America when it's just him versus like 10 Hydra freaking big buff dudes
on the elevator,
and it's just like, what?
My favorite
it's
part.
Like, come on, guys, you screwed this up, and when you had literally the best chance.
2 people versus like a bunch of. Now, granted,
it's Captain America.
They're EMTs essentially, and yeah, they're probably not combat trained, but like that's not true because I know like those individuals like in the military that have the
They go
EMT
through
training.
basic
They
like
go
everyone else.
through SEER, so they have
Yeah.
combat training. I don't see why this would be any different, but no, they get their ass whooped, and then Anyway,
What I was left at is the villagers decided to hide their one most powerful weapon, that ship, like on top of this mountain, around the waterfall. Like I understand what they were going for, like we got to hide this to kind of surprise or whatever.
yeah,
But like you can't get to it. Like middle of the battle, we waste time in the middle of the battle. They're like, quick, let's hop on this pony so we can climb this mountain real quick so you can get to your ship, while our children are being shot and killed. Like,
From low
what
order.
are we doing?
and
What is
that's
going
when
on?
that's when
Now we have to wait
freaking
for this
Jimmy
person to
comes
climb the
into
mountain.
freaking play, and somehow they're all being shot at, and Jimmy just has this, I don't know, moment of, well, I don't know, whatever you want to call
Triumphant
it.
return.
Yeah, but he basically is able to defeat all these soldiers, and then they all get defeated. But then that's when the tanks roll up there, giving off mass exhaust, and it's just like, oh. Where were you during this entire fight? You're just now joining us? Were you up there on the mountain with your freaking antlers?
Oh, yeah, he
Yeah,
was
showed
just
up way
Smoking a
too
peace
late.
pipe or whatever? Dude, I don't know.
Just being a hippie, man. I don't know what to tell you.
Enough of us. What's your thoughts, Kenny?
Oh boy.
He already... He's
I
not going
voiced
to
a
watch
lot
the
of
second
it.
one.
Probably not. But
Oh, you didn't finish it.
I got like 20 minutes in.
So that's your thoughts.
I mean, that's kind of my rule. Give it like the 10, 15-minute rule, and if the movie sucks, turn it off.
Kenny was a lot smarter than me. He said, "Nope, I'm even gonna finish this."
So
Kenny hated so much he canceled his Netflix subscription from it.
no, full disclosure, I like re-upped Netflix to watch the first movie.
He had buyer's remorse.
Buyer's remorse.
Email them.
Fears.
Like, I want my money back.
I want my money back. No, but
You should have done the 7-day trial. 7-day free trial. We'll just...
the account already had it.
Well, all right.
Anyways, my thing is that okay, this guy clearly just cherry picked different aspects of other popular science fiction and just try to throw it into his films and hoping it would stick. And it more or less does not. Like some of the names are just full on lifted from other properties.
Yeah, absolutely dumb. Absolutely stupid. Do not. I hope they do
Yes.
not make more.
You know
just
what?
stop now. Just
The one
No,
that
cut your
hold
losses.
on, pause.
Okay.
I hope they do make more,
I don't
because
know.
that way that gives us more ammunition for more episodes on here to talk so much shit about Zack Snyder. So I say this gives us more ammunition and more showtime. So I say
Sure.
bring it on. I'm down to talk shit about directors and or films.
Yeah.
Let's
But
do it.
what bothers me the most is that okay, some of like my favorite like characters from other medias are like referenced here, and then it's just shot all to hell.
yeah.
It's like they bring up like there's like allusions to Dune. You got Belisarius, for God's sake. Belisarius Call being like one of the more prominent characters in Warhammer 40k. The name is just straight lifted from Warhammer to this. And it bothers me. I'm going to show a picture of my boy Belisarius Call right here. Editor Miko to work.
Good job, Kenny.
Good job.
Nice
and
work,
then
Kenny.
here's the original guy in this film. It's just not... You don't get any sense of threatening from this guy. Like, why is he the one in charge?
No, he looks like a freaking peppy little hipster, well-groomed fuckface.
Oh, boy. And then we also have, like, Budget Furiosa,
Yeah, which is coming out soon.
which is coming out soon, but it just reminds, like, the one, like, rebel that, like, survives, opposed, at least in that first film. I don't... Do we get more of the rebels of, like, the Blood Axes in the second film?
At the very end, they
come
like
to save
there's a
the
couple
day.
of them that end up joining and being recruited to fight with the farmers and whatnot. But at the very end, the ones that did not join end up coming in to save the day and come in with their ships and blow
Okay,
some
because
shit
it
up.
was, like, half implied that they were still on that planet that got nuked. Like, the charity planet or whatever the hell it was called. Can't be bothered.
I don't remember,
remember.
but they come in in part 2. They come in at the very end to air quotes save the day. But
okay.
even then, like, barf.
Barf.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay.
I mean, guys, it's visually entertaining, right?
Part 1 was.
Maybe. I mean, there were times, like even in that first film, where I just got up, didn't even bother putting it on pause, walked out of the room for a couple minutes, and came back. Like, this film was not engaging enough.
It's engaging enough for a lazy Sunday. It's visually spectacular. The one thing that I will say is that the score for it was forgetful. But the parts that I do remember, I was kind of getting some Dune vibes a little bit. But the score for the most part was forgetful. Sorry to bust anybody that feels opposite, but I'm one that
You're a
loves.
music man.
I'm a music man, so if a movie has a great score, I'm gonna talk about it. And this movie definitely, I can't get behind it. And he was worked with Hans Zimmer,
Like, the guy has plenty of experience.
he has the experience in films to do great scores, and this
Just gets drowned out by the slow motion, man.
it just didn't do it for me. It really didn't.
Yeah. Alrighty, I think those were some pretty solid closing thoughts. Colin, the people want to find us, where can they?
Man, if you all are interested in what we have to say, please give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Like, subscribe, do the whole shebang. We'll throw out some shorts every now and again, but please, please, please show some love in the comments and let us know what you think.
Sounds great. Thanks, everybody.
Zero,
Thanks.
mate.